Hello and welcome back. In our last world building video, we discussed basically building a sentient world. We're going to continue on that today with the basics of getting started. Now, there are some things in each aspect that you're going to need to know, and I've broken them up a little bit different because it makes a bit more sense to create them, not necessarily in this order, but in this outline. So this is going to be how you start to build your world. You're going to want to take a piece of paper and a pencil and just start drafting some ideas. If that doesn't work for you, start drawing a map, and if that doesn't work, start writing down paragraphs of what you want in your world. I generally start by listing everything I want to include in the world in 3 to 4 word statements, and then start tackling the most interesting things and building off of that. I don't flesh them out, I just write a few paragraphs and move on. But here's some things you're going to want to consider for building your first world. First are physical. This is geology, geography, weather and climate, and maps. You're really going to want to make sure that your world has a basis to stand on. This is the foundation for everything else you're going to do. It doesn't necessarily have to be the first thing you do. I generally figure out a few facts about it, like what continents are going to look like, and then come back and detail everything later once I've made the culture, because you have to take into account cultural impacts on land if you're going to be making a sentient world. You do want to keep maps, even if they're just little sketches, because otherwise you're going to get confused and forget where you put something. And as I said in another thing I was talking about the other day, maps can be as simple as lines between places. They don't have to be anything detailed. It can be names put on a piece of paper and their relationship to one another. It can just be distances written down. It doesn't have to be anything superior. You don't have to be a great artist. If nothing else, take your box of crayons and pick out one to be a different kind of landform from another and just scribble. Next, you're going to want to get your history down. This includes prehistory, biological history, system and off-world history, which also includes your pre-world history, recorded history, and timelines. Now, the thing with prehistory is that it's everything that's not recorded. You're going to want to make a timeline of this. You're going to want to make a timeline of all of this, or else you're going to get incredibly confused, especially if the world is in depth. I should say it as an aside right now that I'm talking about medium depth worlds here, not just simple settings for role play. Normally those can be left a little bit more open and ready to flesh out. But if you're doing anything detailed, from a moderate world up to a high detail world, you're going to want to have all this stuff. And you're going to want to have lots of timelines because, like I said, you're going to get confused otherwise. So your prehistory is going to be one timeline. Then you're going to also have your biological history. Now, that's a little bit different. That's the history of evolution, whether it be magical, religious, or whatever, on your planet. You don't necessarily need to know that unless you're going into a plot that relies on it. Not many plots are going to have you investigating the chromosomal ancestors of your entire species, but some might, so keep that in mind when you're making your world. System and off-world is the history of your solar system. Again, you don't necessarily have to know that, but it's still good to know where you sit in the solar system, what planet you are, and about how old your world is. Also, if something was there before your world, you really need to know that because it's likely vital to your story. Recorded history is everything that's written down or passed down through oral tradition. And that's about it for history. You're going to want to sit down and rough out some timelines. These can be done as you're building the rest of the world, but you want to put the big events down first. Don't put dates next to them because they're going to change. Trust me, it will change. Next is that horrible culture again. Culture's my favorite part. I absolutely adore making culture for worlds, and that's why I sort of touched on it first. It's most people's favorite. Now, for culture, you're going to want to cover art, advancements, cultural advancements specifically, religion, politics, tensions, and resources. I already discussed art and advancements pretty much in depth, so we're going to go to religion, which is basically a belief structure, as I said before. Religions are things that people will fight fervently for, despite there sometimes being no evidence for them. Any belief system that someone holds without scientific proof or disproof can pretty much be lumped into a religion. It's basically going to be what drives a lot of the politics. Other things that drive politics are going to be resources and just people being people. Like I said before, if you put two people in a room, there will be politics, even if they're friendly. You're also going to want to make sure you write down any tensions. Where are there border wars? Where might there be border wars? Who's trying to take over the world? Who's trying to keep peace? Who is a puppet dictator? And finally, you're going to want to know where your resources are. Because your resources, where they are sitting, aside from just being a part of geography, is also going to be a huge part of your culture. Not all resources are geographic. Some of them are biological. Some of them are created. Some of them are talent that someone has. Some of them are the crown jewels. You're going to want to know where all this stuff sits. So make a list of the most important resources and those that are going to cause cultural conflict or enrichment. Next you have science, tech, and magic. Ooh. It's things that sci-fi and fantasy people love. Now you're going to want to have your scientific laws, your cultural rules regarding technology, tech and magic level, place of tech in the world, and the enemies of tech. Pretty much anywhere that says tech can be magic as well. So you're going to want to have your scientific or magical laws. These are the ways that these are the things that govern the ways that magic and science work. You're also going to want to have your rules, and what your rules do is these are basically human laws, or whatever species you're working with, that say this can be done here, this can't be done here. This is an organization of skeptics who are trying to prove or disprove the way the world works. All that stuff, all the way culture reacts to it, and the impositions applied to science and tech and magic. You're going to want to know the place of tech in the world. Is it widely accepted? Is it taboo? And you're also going to really want to know the enemies of tech, if there are any. If there's any enemies of your magic system, if there's any enemies of tech, maybe your magic or tech system is the usurper. You want to know all this. So take a few minutes and figure that out. Again, that doesn't have to be done right away, but it's something you're going to want by the end of the finished project. And finally, this is one of the most important things, biology. Keep in mind, biology might not look the same on your world as it does on ours, or anywhere near, but plants, animals, other life, sentient species, which is anything that can pretty much think for itself and say, oh, I'm a something. Species as resources, which are like cattle or, cultivated plants or mushrooms. Enhancements, cyborgs, medical research, and distribution, which is where everything is. You might have a species that's only in one place. You might have one that covers the world, like a social parasite like cats. So that's pretty much what you're going to need. You're going to take notes on all this stuff and start to combine it. You don't have to do it in any particular order, but by the time you're done, you're going to want to have all of these things on these lovely lists in your world. So that's a quick overview of getting started and what's going to be required for your world when you do try to make one that's a little bit more than simple. Alright, thanks. I'll be back with another video soon. Just stay tuned.